My family abandoned me when I had no job. 5 years later, they showed up and said, "You're not family. The house is ours." I stayed silent, then dialed 911. What if the people who were supposed to love you most became your worst nightmare? I'm Sabrina, and my family not only turned me away when I was homeless, but 5 years later, they came back ready to steal the very roof over my head. I'm Sabrina, 32 years old, and I never thought my family would betray me, not once, but twice. You see, for 5 long years, there was only silence. Then, one day, they just showed up at my doorstep, suitcases in hand. They walked in like they owned the place. And my father, Richard, looked me straight in the eyes and said those words that still haunt me: "You don't even have a family. We will take this house." My heart hammered, but I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just reached for my phone and dialed 3 numbers. Growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, our family looked normal. My father, a bank manager, always in crisp suits. My mother, a nurse working long shifts, but somehow always keeping our house spotless. And then there was Brian, my older brother, 3 years my senior, the golden child. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house, nothing fancy, just your average American family, or so it seemed. But beneath that picture-perfect facade lay dynamics that shaped my entire life. From an early age, I felt the difference. Brian was destined for greatness. His mediocre grades, celebrated. My excellent ones, merely expected. When he got into state university with a partial scholarship, my parents threw a huge party, bought him a brand new car, and drained their savings to keep him debt-free. Me, from freshman year, I was told I'd need part-time jobs. By 16, I was balancing school with 20 hours a week at the local diner, saving every penny, even with straight A's and extracurriculars. There was never talk of prestigious universities for me. The message was clear, unspoken. Brian was the investment. I was the afterthought. The one person who saw me differently, truly saw me, was my grandmother, Margaret, my mother's mother. Grandma Margaret lived an hour away in a cottage with a garden that, to me, felt magical. Every summer, I'd spend 3 weeks with her while Brian was at sports camps. Those weeks were my salvation. Sabrina, she'd tell me, her weathered hands guiding mine in the soil, "Never let anyone tell you what your worth is. Only you decide that. And never depend on someone else to keep a roof over your head. Learn to build your own." Grandma Margaret raised 3 children, mostly alone after my grandfather passed. She worked as a seamstress, put them all through some college. Her strength, her independence. She became my North Star, especially when things at home felt suffocating. The pressure from my parents intensified as college approached. My mother decided I should be a nurse. It's a stable profession. "Sabrina, you'll always have work," she'd say, completely dismissing my zero interest in medicine. My father agreed. Creative careers are for people who have family money to fall back on. What they didn't understand was I had found my passion, graphic design. My art teacher, Miss Winters, saw my eye for composition, introduced me to digital programs. I devoured them, staying late after school, entering competitions. When I won a regional design award, my parents called it a nice hobby, not a real career. The tension reached its peak senior year when college applications were due. I applied to a local community college with a strong design program and a few affordable state schools. Acceptance letters came in. My parents refused to contribute a dime unless I switched my major to nursing or business. "We are not wasting money on an art degree," my father stated firmly at dinner. "If you want to throw away your future, you can pay for it yourself." I looked at my mother for support. She just stared at her plate. Brian, home from college, smirked. Maybe you should listen to Dad. Sabrina, not everyone is cut out for a real career. That night, I cried myself to sleep. But the next morning, my decision was made. I would attend community college, work full-time, and pursue my design degree, no matter what. When I announced it at breakfast, my father just shrugged. Your life, your mistake. I graduated high school with honors, moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, and worked nearly 40 hours a week between a coffee shop and retail, all while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in my design classes. I visited Grandma Margaret whenever I could, drawing strength from her unwavering belief in me. After 2 years, I transferred to a state university to complete my bachelor's. By then, I was barely speaking to my parents. Our interactions were limited to obligatory holiday visits where my father would ask pointed questions about my income potential, and my mother would slip me $20 bills like I was still a child, whispering, "In case you need to eat." Brian had graduated, secured a job at a financial firm, following my father's footsteps. Every family gathering became a showcase for his success, a subtle highlight of my perceived failure. "Brian just got a promotion," my mother would proudly announce, "and he's looking at buying a condo downtown." The unspoken comparison hung in the air like a heavy cloud. By the time I graduated at 22, I hadn't lived at home for 4 years. I went to my graduation ceremony alone. My parents chose a conference related to Brian's work instead. Grandma Margaret, now using a walker, was the only family member in the audience. Her proud smile as I walked across the stage meant more than 1,000 absent relatives. With my degree in hand, I moved to Philadelphia for better job opportunities. The design scene was growing, and I'd secured an internship. The night before I left, I had dinner with Grandma Margaret. "I'm scared," I admitted as we shared pie on her porch. "What if they're right and I fail?" She took my hand, her blue eyes sharp despite her 82 years. "Sabrina, the only true failure is living someone else's dream. You follow your heart, and I will always be here if you need a soft place to land." With those words echoing in my mind, I packed my car the next morning and drove toward my future, determined to prove that I could succeed on my own terms, even if my family refused to believe in me. My first 2 years in Philadelphia were challenging but rewarding. I transitioned from internship to junior designer. The pay was modest, but I was building a portfolio. I shared a 2-bedroom apartment with Jessica, a teacher I met through an app. We became fast friends, turning our shabby apartment into a cozy home with thrift store finds. I called Grandma Margaret weekly, visited when I could. Contact with my parents dwindled to obligatory birthday calls and tense Thanksgiving visits. Brian got promoted again, bought that condo. My mother never failed to mention it. Then, 5 years ago, everything fell apart. The recession hit hard. My marketing agency lost clients. One Monday morning, we arrived to find the doors locked. A bankruptcy notice taped to the window. Just like that, I was unemployed. I freelanced, reached out to old clients, applied for anything, but everyone was cutting budgets. My meager savings dwindled rapidly. Jessica helped where she could, covering utilities, sharing leftovers. But she wasn't flush with cash either. After 3 months of sparse work and mounting bills, I got an eviction warning. I'd paid partial rent for 2 months, but the landlord's patience was gone. Jessica was moving in with her boyfriend. I couldn't cover the full rent. Panic set in. I was weeks away from homelessness. With nowhere else to turn, I swallowed my pride. I called my parents. The phone rang 4 times. My mother answered with a distracted, "Hello." "Mom, it's Sabrina," I said, my voice already trembling. "I need help." There was a pause. I heard her calling to my father. "Richard, it's Sabrina." I explained my situation, asking for enough for 1 month's rent. I promised to pay them back with interest. The silence that followed my request stretched. Then my father's voice, cold and distant. Sabrina, this is exactly what we warned you about. This unstable career path you chose has led you exactly where we predicted. Dad, please, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I just need a little help to get back on my feet. I have interviews lined up, but I need somewhere to live. We've been supporting Brian with his MBA tuition. My mother interjected. We simply don't have extra funds right now. I knew it was a lie. They always found money for Brian. What they meant was they didn't have money for me. You made your bed when you ignored our advice, my father continued. Perhaps this will teach you to make more practical decisions in the future. The call ended. No offer of help. Not even a place to stay. I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes, sobbing until I could barely breathe. That night, I called Grandma Margaret, but no answer. Her neighbor informed me the next day that my grandmother had been hospitalized with pneumonia. I wanted desperately to go to her, but I had neither the money for the trip nor a place to leave my belongings. 2 weeks later, I was officially evicted. Jessica helped me load my most essential possessions into my 12-year-old Honda Civic. My design equipment, clothes, a few personal items. The rest went into a small storage unit, paid for with my last $100. With nowhere else to go, I drove to my parents' house. It was a rainy October evening. I parked in their driveway. Through the windows, I saw them watching TV. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, gathering courage. Finally, I rang the bell. My father answered, surprise, quickly turning to disapproval as he took in my disheveled appearance, the desperation in my eyes. Sabrina, what are you doing here? Dad, I lost my apartment. I just need a place to stay for a few weeks until I can find work and save. Please. He looked past me to my car, stuffed with belongings. This is exactly what happens with these artistic careers. Instability. Richard, who is it? My mother appeared. Her expression hardened when she saw me. Our daughter seems to have found herself homeless. He replied, no attempt to hide his disdain. I'm not homeless, I said, my voice breaking. I just need family right now. My father crossed his arms. You chose your path, Sabrina. You chose to ignore our guidance. Now you need to take responsibility. We're hosting the neighborhood association meeting tomorrow, my mother added. This really isn't a good time. I stood there in the rain. Your own daughter. You've made it clear you don't need our input in your life decisions, my father said firmly. You cannot reject our advice and then expect our support when those decisions lead to hardship. With that, he closed the door. I remained on the porch for several minutes, rain soaking through my jacket, before returning to my car. I sat in their driveway, watching their shadows behind the curtains, waiting for them to change their minds. They never did. Eventually, I drove to a Walmart parking lot. I spent the night sleeping in my reclined driver's seat, $25 to my name, nowhere to go. I called and texted Brian, hoping he might help. My messages went unanswered. For 2 weeks, I lived in my car, showering at a gym, using library computers to search for jobs. I kept calling my parents, leaving desperate voicemails. Never returned. One night, I drove past their house and saw Brian's car. The entire family was together, excluding me. It was the lowest point of my life. Abandoned. No home. No family. All because I dared to follow my own path. On a particularly cold November morning, I was sitting in a local coffee shop, nursing a single cup of tea. My appearance had deteriorated. My clothes wrinkled. Despite the gym showers, I looked disheveled. I was so focused on my laptop, I didn't notice someone until they spoke. Sabrina? Sabrina Wilson. I looked up to see Eleanor Garcia, a former colleague. She was dressed smartly, holding a to-go coffee. Eleanor. Hi, I said, immediately self-conscious. I thought that was you. I'd been trying to reach you. She slid into the chair. How have you been? Are you working somewhere new? I considered lying, but I was too exhausted. Not exactly. I've been freelancing, but it's slow. Actually, I'm kind of between places right now. Eleanor's expression shifted. Between places, as in housing? I nodded, fighting back tears. It's been a rough few months. Eleanor leaned forward, lowering her voice. Sabrina, are you living in your car? The direct question broke through my composure. I nodded again, unable to speak as tears spilled down my cheeks. Eleanor immediately moved her chair closer, put a hand on my arm. Why didn't you reach out to any of us? The whole team's been checking in. I didn't want anyone to know how badly I was failing. I admitted. Everyone else seemed to land on their feet. Eleanor shook her head. Trust me, everyone struggled. I was unemployed for 6 weeks before I found something. She paused. When was the last time you ate a proper meal? The question made me realize I couldn't remember. Come on, Eleanor said, standing up. Pack your stuff. You're coming with me. Before I could protest, she helped me gather my laptop and bag. We left my car in the parking lot. 30 minutes later, we were in her warm apartment. She made sandwiches and soup. After I ate, she showed me to her spare bedroom. It's not much, but it has a real bed, and it's yours for as long as you need it, she said, putting fresh towels on the dresser. I was overwhelmed. I can't accept this. Eleanor. We were a team, she corrected me. And now we're friends. That's what friends do. She sat on the edge of the bed. Besides, I might have a job opportunity for you. Eleanor explained her boyfriend, Michael, ran a small design studio. They needed someone to assist with graphic elements and UI design. The pay was modest, but it was steady. I can't promise anything, she cautioned, but I'll talk to him tonight. In the meantime, take a shower, get some real sleep, and we'll figure this out together. The next morning, I met Michael. His studio was small but growing. After reviewing my portfolio, he offered me a position on the spot. Entry level, a step back, but it was work. I accepted immediately. That afternoon, Eleanor helped me retrieve my car and possessions. As we were organizing the spare room, my phone rang. Unrecognized number. Is this Sabrina Wilson? Yes, this is she. This is Nancy Holden, your grandmother's neighbor. I've been trying to reach you. Your grandmother's condition has worsened. The doctors aren't optimistic. My heart sank. In the chaos of my own crisis, I hadn't been able to check on Grandma Margaret. I'd left messages, but we'd missed each other. She's been asking for you, Nancy continued. I think you should come if you can. I explained to Eleanor, who immediately offered to drive me the 3 hours. We'll go right now. Let me just call Michael. We arrived at the hospital after 9 that evening. Grandma Margaret looked so small, connected to oxygen and monitors, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. She reached out a frail hand. My Sabrina, she whispered, I knew you would come. I sat with her all night, holding her hand, telling her about my new job opportunity. I didn't burden her with the details of my homelessness or my parents' rejection. She was too weak. Instead, I focused on the positive turn my situation had taken. Thanks to Eleanor. I always told you, she murmured. You make your own way. In the early morning hours, she asked me to retrieve a small box from her purse. Inside was a key and a folded document. My will, she explained softly. House is yours. Always meant for you. I tried to object, to tell her she'd recover, but she shook her head. Listen now, she said, her voice surprisingly firm. You have the spirit, the strength. Brian has your parents. You need roots. 2 days later, Grandma Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep, her hand in mine. Through my grief, I navigated the practical matters. The hospital contacted my parents. They arrived for the funeral, looking appropriately somber, but largely uninvolved. During the reading of the will, their demeanor changed dramatically. Grandma Margaret had indeed left her cottage and savings to me, with only small mementos for my mother and Brian. My father's face darkened with anger. My mother burst into tears. "Mother always favored you," she accused me. I didn't respond. I took the keys to my grandmother's house and began the process of moving into my unexpected inheritance. The cottage needed work. It was well maintained, but reflected my grandmother's 85 years in its decor. Still, it was mine. A home no one could take from me. Eleanor helped me move in, bringing necessities, spending a weekend, helping me clean. "It has good bones," she declared, "and amazing natural light for a home office." For the first time in months, I fell asleep feeling safe, with a sense of possibility. In my grandmother's garden, now overgrown but still beautiful, I could almost hear her voice. "You built your own shelter, Sabrina. You always could." With a roof securely over my head and a steady job I could do remotely, I began rebuilding my life. I transformed the small front room into a home office. Michael was pleased with my work, increased my responsibilities. The cottage itself became my passion project. I tackled one room at a time, maintaining Grandma Margaret's character. The garden, her pride and joy, became my weekend therapy. I knew nothing about plants when I started, but I bought books, watched videos, and slowly brought the overgrown beds back to life. Living in a small town after years in the city required adjustment. At first, I kept to myself, still raw from my family's rejection, wary of new connections. But small towns have a way of drawing you in. Mrs. Jenkins, next door, brought over a casserole. Tom from the hardware store started setting aside vintage doorknobs for me. Soon, I was exchanging waves and small talk. 6 months after moving in, I had my first real friend in town. I'd been frequenting the small local bookstore, partly for design inspiration, partly for the excellent coffee. The owner, Patrick Lewis, was about my age. "You're going to wear that design book out," he commented one day. "Why not just buy it?" "Budget constraints," I admitted with a smile. "I'm renovating bit by bit." The next day, the book was wrapped in brown paper behind the counter with a note, "Renovation consultant fee. Your coffee wisdom has improved our menu." Patrick, we became friends. Through books, through coffee, sharing recommendations, eventually meals. Patrick was easy to talk to, with none of the judgment I had grown accustomed to. When I finally told him the full story, he listened without interruption. "Your parents sound like real pieces of work," was his only comment. Their loss. As my design skills and client list grew, I took a risk. Using my savings, I launched my own studio, Elevation Designs, focusing on branding for small businesses. My experience at Michael's showed me many local businesses struggled with their visual identity, but couldn't afford large agency fees. I started with a website, business cards, then approached local shops. My first client was Patrick. From there, word spread. Within a year, I had enough regular clients to leave Michael's, though we maintained a collaborative relationship. As my business grew, so did my investment in the cottage. I replaced the roof, updated the heating system, renovated the kitchen. The property value increased substantially, but that was secondary to creating a home that honored Grandma Margaret while reflecting my own style. The garden flourished. I added a small patio, a fire pit. Patrick often joined me there, bringing books, listening to my ideas. By the 5-year anniversary of Grandma Margaret's passing, my life had transformed completely. Elevation Designs had 3 employees besides myself, operating from a converted garage on my property. I had established myself in the community, joining the Small Business Association. My relationship with Patrick had deepened into something more than friendship. My circle of friends included Eleanor and Michael, who visited regularly. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Brian since the funeral. Occasionally, a Christmas card with no personal message, just their printed names. I sent similar impersonal cards in return, unwilling to sever the last thread completely, but protecting myself from further hurt. The cottage, once my grandmother's haven, had become my own sanctuary and success story. The girl who had once slept in her car now owned a debt-free home, ran a profitable business, and had created a life filled with meaningful connections. I had done exactly what Grandma Margaret believed I could do, built my own shelter both physically and emotionally. What I didn't realize was that my hard-won peace was about to be shattered by the very people who had once turned me away. The first sign came in the form of an email from Brian. An ordinary Tuesday morning. Seeing his name in my inbox after 5 years of silence made my coffee taste suddenly bitter. Touching base, dear Sabrina. The message began with artificial warmth. It's been too long. I came across your design company website and was impressed. Mom and Dad mentioned they haven't heard from you and are concerned. Hope all is well. Let's catch up soon. Brian. I stared at the screen. No acknowledgement of his silence when I needed help. No mention of their rejection when I was homeless. Just a casual touching base, as if we'd simply lost track. I showed the email to Patrick during lunch. Sounds like someone wants something, he commented. People don't usually reach out after 5 years of silence just to say hello. I nodded. The same suspicion had formed in my mind. The timing is strange, too. Why now? Are you going to respond? He asked. Not yet. I want to see if there's more to this sudden interest. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, my phone rang. My parents' number. After 5 years of silence, the sight of it was so startling I answered without thinking. Sabrina, darling, my mother's voice, artificially bright. It's so good to finally hear your voice. Mom, I replied neutrally. This is unexpected. Well, we've been thinking about you so much lately. Brian mentioned he reached out and hadn't heard back. We were worried. I've been busy, I said. Running my business takes a lot of time. Yes, we saw your website. Very impressive. Honey, your father and I were just saying how proud we are of what you've accomplished. The praise felt hollow. Anyway, we feel terrible about the misunderstandings in the past. Family is so important, and we'd love to reconnect. Perhaps we could come visit you soon. Misunderstandings. I repeated, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Is that what you call turning away your daughter when she was homeless? There was a pause. Then her voice, lower. We all made mistakes, Sabrina. We were going through a difficult time ourselves, but that's in the past. We should focus on rebuilding our relationship now. Something in her tone struck me as rehearsed. I agreed to think about a visit, then ended the call as quickly as possible. That evening, another call. Brian. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hey, sis, he said with forced cheer. Mom said you two spoke. It's great that we're all reconnecting. What's going on, Brian? I asked directly. Why the sudden family reunion interest after 5 years? He laughed, a slightly strained sound. Can a brother want to reconnect with his sister? But since you asked, things have been challenging lately. Over the next 20 minutes, Brian revealed the family situation. He had made poor investment decisions, lost most of his savings, accumulated significant debt. My father had been forced into early retirement after an internal investigation. No criminal charges, but his reputation was ruined. My mother developed back problems, preventing her from working full shifts. We've had to downsize significantly, Brian explained. The condo was foreclosed, and Mom and Dad had to sell the house. They're in a small apartment now. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely meaning it. That must be difficult. Yeah, well, family has to stick together in tough times, right? The irony was lost on him. Anyway, we were thinking we could come visit next weekend. Get to know your town, see Grandma's old place, reconnect. I reluctantly agreed to a Saturday lunch, setting clear boundaries. Brief visit, no overnight stay. After hanging up, I called Patrick. They're coming Saturday, I told him. And from what Brian said, they're in financial trouble. Want me to be there? Patrick offered. I accepted gratefully, already anxious. That Saturday, my family arrived, diminished by circumstances. My mother embraced me, teary-eyed. Brian hung back, surveying the cottage with undisguised interest. You've done wonders with the place, my mother commented on the brief tour. It's so much nicer than when your grandmother lived here. Grandmother kept it perfectly nice, I replied. I've just updated some things while maintaining her style. Must have cost a fortune, my father remarked, peering at the new kitchen appliances. Seems like your little design business is doing well. Elevation Designs is doing very well, Patrick interjected smoothly. Sabrina has clients across 3 states now. My father's eyes narrowed slightly at Patrick's presence, clearly not expecting me to have backup. And you are? Patrick Lewis. I own the bookstore in town and have known Sabrina since she moved here. Lunch was tense. My parents and Brian alternated between complimenting the house and subtly highlighting their current difficulties. My mother mentioned their cramped apartment 3 times. Brian talked about the impossible job market. As they prepared to leave, Brian asked to use the bathroom. He was gone for an unusually long time. When he returned, I noticed his phone in his hand. Getting good reception here, he commented casually. The cottage has really solid bones. Good investment property. After they left, Patrick helped me clean up. Well, that was uncomfortable, he said. Did you notice your brother taking pictures of every room? I nodded, a sick feeling in my stomach. My father asking about property values. My mother commenting on how much space I had for just one person. They're planning something, Patrick said, stating what we both knew. Be careful, Sabrina. The following week brought daily calls. My mother wanted recipes. My father had questions about the heating system. Brian wondered if I had the original deed from Grandma Margaret. Each conversation felt like a probe, testing for vulnerabilities. The truth became clear during their second visit 2 weeks later. As we sat in the garden, my father broached the subject directly. Sabrina, your mother and I have been thinking. This house has 3 bedrooms, and you're just one person. We're struggling in that tiny apartment. It would make sense for us to move in here. A family home should house a family. I stared at him, speechless. This is my home, I finally said. I inherited it from grandmother. Yes, but surely she intended it to benefit the whole family, my mother interjected. She wouldn't have wanted us struggling while you have all this space. Actually, she specifically left it to me because she knew I would care for it properly. I responded, anger rising, and because she knew I was the only one who truly appreciated it. Well, regardless of her intentions, my father said dismissively, we are family. We should support each other. Brian could take the room above the garage, and your mother and I would take the master bedroom. That is my office, I said incredulously, where I run my business. You could move your little computer to the dining room, my mother suggested, as if solving a simple problem. It would be a much more efficient use of the space. This is not happening. I stated firmly, I am sorry for your situation, but you cannot move in here. The conversation deteriorated. My father became increasingly insistent. My mother alternated between guilt trips and passive-aggressive comments. Brian remained suspiciously quiet, typing on his phone. After they left, I immediately called my lawyer. He assured me everything was in order. The house is solely in your name. They have no legal claim to it whatsoever. Despite this reassurance, I followed Patrick's suggestion and installed security cameras. Something told me this confrontation was far from over. 3 weeks later, I needed to attend a design conference in Boston. Patrick offered to check on the house, but he had the bookstore to run. The conference lasted 3 days. On the second evening, networking at a reception, I received a text from Mrs. Jenkins, my neighbor. Thought you were away until tomorrow. Saw lights on in your house and people moving around inside. Everything okay? My heart raced. I called her immediately. Mrs. Jenkins, I'm still in Boston. There shouldn't be anyone in my house. Oh dear, she replied. Should I call the police? No, let me check my security cameras first, I said, trying to stay calm. I'll call you right back. I opened the security app with trembling fingers. The footage showed my father's car in the driveway and 3 figures unloading boxes and suitcases. I watched in disbelief as my father used something to force the back door lock, then let my mother and Brian inside. I immediately called Patrick. They're breaking into my house. I told him, my voice shaking. They're moving in while I'm gone. I'll drive over right now, he promised. Should I call the police? Not yet, I said, still processing the betrayal. Let me try calling them first. I called my father's cell phone, watching on camera as he checked the screen, then declined. My mother and Brian. Same result. Finally, I called the landline I'd installed in the cottage. After several rings, Brian answered. Hello, Wilson Residence, he said casually, as if he belonged there. Brian, what the hell are you doing in my house? I demanded. There was a pause. Then a sigh. Sabrina, we were going to call you tomorrow. We're just getting settled in. Getting settled in. You broke into my house. You're trespassing. Don't be dramatic, he replied coolly. This is a family home. We're family. Besides, it's not like you need all this space just for yourself. I heard my father in the background. Brian partially covered the phone. I could still make out my father saying, Tell her we'll discuss it when she returns. The decision has been made. You need to leave right now. I stated, struggling to control my anger. I'm calling the police if you're not out of my house in 30 minutes. Brian's voice hardened. That would be a mistake. Sabrina, we have nowhere else to go. And calling the police on your own family would be cruel. Besides, Mom and Dad are the ones with the real family connection to this house. Not you. It's my house, Brian. Grandmother left it to me. A technicality he dismissed. Anyway, we've already spoken to a lawyer about challenging the will. Grandma was old and not entirely competent when she made those arrangements. We have a good case for overturning it. The threat sent a chill through me. While I knew they had no legal ground, the idea of a court battle was daunting. I ended the call and immediately booked a flight home for the next morning, missing the final day of the conference. Patrick met me at the airport, his face grim. They're still there, he reported. Your father answered the door and told me it was a family matter and to mind my own business. Did you call the police? I asked as we drove toward the cottage. I thought that should be your decision, he replied. But I did speak to your lawyer. He said their claims about challenging the will are nonsense. Your grandmother had regular cognitive assessments and was fully competent when she updated her will. When we arrived, I was shocked. My family had already made visible changes. my mother's decorative pillows on the porch swing, my father's golf clubs by the front door. They had quite literally moved in, assuming ownership. I took a deep breath and entered my own home with my key. The scene inside was worse than I had imagined. My carefully arranged living room rearranged, boxes of their belongings stacked, family photos I had removed years ago, now on the mantel, replacing my own. My mother emerged from the kitchen, startled. "Sabrina, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow." Clearly, I replied coldly, "Where's Dad?" "In the master bedroom, organizing his clothes." The casual way she referred to my bedroom sent anger coursing through me. I found my father hanging his suits in my closet, my own clothes pushed aside. Brian was in the room above the garage, my office, where he had moved my design equipment to one corner to make space for his bed. I gathered them in the living room, Patrick standing supportively behind me. "You all need to leave," I stated firmly. "Now." "Sabrina, be reasonable," my father began, his authoritative tone. "This arrangement makes sense for everyone. You have this big house all to yourself while we've been struggling. A situation of your own making," I pointed out, "and completely irrelevant to my home ownership." "You don't even have a real family," my mother said with surprising venom. "No husband, no children, just you and your little business. We need this house more than you do." "That's not how property ownership works," Patrick interjected. My father turned to him with a glare. "This doesn't concern you. This is between family." "Patrick is more family to me than any of you have been," I replied. "He didn't abandon me when I was homeless and desperate." "Ancient history," Brian waved dismissively. "We're here now, ready to be a family again. After you've depleted your resources and need something from me," I said, "this is not about family. This is about you wanting my house." "We will take this house," my father stated flatly, dropping all pretense. "One way or another. We've already spoken to a lawyer about our options." "Your non-existent options," I corrected. "The house is legally mine. For now," he said with disturbing confidence. "But we have documented evidence of your grandmother's declining mental state. And as her direct descendants, we have a strong case for rightful inheritance." I knew he was bluffing, but the confrontation had gone far enough. Without another word, I took out my phone and dialed 911. "What are you doing?" my mother demanded, her eyes widening. "Calling the police to report trespassers in my home," I replied calmly. "We are not trespassers. We are your family," she shrieked. "Family does not break into each other's homes," I said as the dispatcher answered. I reported the situation, providing my address, explaining that people had entered my home without permission and were refusing to leave. My father lunged for the phone, but Patrick stepped between us. "Don't make this worse," he warned my father. The 15 minutes it took for the police to arrive were tense and silent. When 2 officers knocked, I answered, explained the situation, showed them my ID and the deed. These people entered my home without permission while I was out of town. They damaged my back door. My father attempted to argue it was a family disagreement, but the officers were clear. "Sir, if you do not have legal residence here, and the homeowner wants you to leave, you need to leave," the older officer stated firmly. "Otherwise, you will be arrested for trespassing." "This is ridiculous. She's my daughter," my father protested. "That does not give you the right to enter her property without permission," the officer replied. "You have 30 minutes to collect your immediate belongings. Anything else can be arranged for pickup." As they gathered their things under police supervision, my mother approached me, tears in her eyes. "How could you do this to your own parents?" I met her gaze steadily, the same way you could turn away your daughter when she had nowhere else to go. The security footage of their break-in was provided to the police, who advised me on obtaining a restraining order. My lawyer filed the paperwork, and within a week, a temporary order was granted, preventing my family from approaching my property. As I watched the police escort my family from my home, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. There was pain at the depth of their betrayal, anger at their entitlement, but primarily a sense of righteous validation. For the first time, I had stood my ground against their manipulation and emotional abuse. That night, after securing the house with new locks, I sat with Patrick on the porch swing Grandma Margaret had loved. "You did the right thing," he assured me, his arm around my shoulders. "I know," I replied, watching the stars emerge. "It just shouldn't have had to come to this." The legal aftermath lasted several months. The temporary restraining order became permanent when evidence of their premeditated plan emerged. Text messages recovered from Brian's phone revealed their scheme to move in during my absence and claim emotional duress. Their bluff about challenging the will was exposed as baseless by Grandma Margaret's medical records. My father and Brian faced minor criminal charges, probation, and community service. They maintained they had done nothing wrong, that family property should be shared. My mother, however, began to show signs of regret. 3 weeks after the court hearing, I received a handwritten letter from her. Unlike the defensive, entitled tone they had all taken, her words seemed genuinely remorseful. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote, "but I need you to know that I see now how terribly we failed you. Not just in these recent events, but throughout your life. Your father and Brian are still angry, but I cannot continue pretending what we did was justified. When you needed us most, we turned you away. There is no excuse for that." The letter stirred complicated feelings. Part of me wanted to believe her remorse, while another part remained wary. After careful consideration, I wrote back a brief, civil response, acknowledging her apology without offering immediate reconciliation. Trust, once broken so thoroughly, could not be quickly rebuilt. The experience left emotional scars that required professional help. I began seeing a therapist specializing in family trauma, joining a support group for people with toxic family relationships. The shared stories helped me understand my situation wasn't unique, and that setting boundaries wasn't just acceptable, but necessary for healing. Family is not defined by blood, my therapist often reminded me. It is defined by consistent love, respect, and support. This truth resonated deeply as I reflected on who had actually provided those things in my life. Patrick, whose steadfast presence had become a cornerstone of my happiness. Eleanor, who had extended a lifeline. The community of neighbors and fellow small business owners who had welcomed me without judgment. My relationship with Patrick deepened through these challenging months. His unwavering support showed me what genuine partnership looked like. On the first anniversary of the break-in, he proposed in Grandma Margaret's garden, now flourishing with the perennials I had planted in her memory. "You deserve a family who sees your worth," he said, offering a simple, elegant ring. "I would be honored to start that family with you." 6 months later, we married in a small ceremony in that same garden. Eleanor was my maid of honor. Michael stood with Patrick. My parents and Brian were not invited, a boundary that protected the joy of the day. Instead, I was surrounded by the family I had chosen. People who had proved their love through actions, rather than mere biological connection. As life settled into a new normal, I found myself contemplating ways to transform my painful experiences into something meaningful. The cottage, once a source of conflict, became a sanctuary, not just for me, but for others in need. I established a small foundation in Grandma Margaret's name, providing temporary housing and career mentorship for young adults facing homelessness due to family rejection. "Everyone deserves a safe place to land," I explained to the local paper. and everyone deserves the chance to build their own success story. The first recipient was Jamie, a 22-year-old graphic design student whose parents had cut her off when she changed majors from business to art. The parallels to my own story were striking. I offered her the apartment above the garage, now converted into proper living space, and an internship at Elevation Designs. Watching her confidence grow reminded me of my own journey. 5 years after being abandoned by my biological family, I had created something far stronger than the ties that had failed me. I had built a home, a business, a marriage, and a purpose that honored Grandma Margaret's belief in me while extending that same support to others. I occasionally received updates about my parents and Brian through mutual acquaintances. My father never acknowledged his wrongdoing. Brian moved to another state. My mother had separated from my father and was attempting to rebuild her life independently, a development that suggested she at least had learned something from our family's implosion. The door to reconciliation remained theoretically open, but with conditions that honored my self-worth. Any relationship would need to be built on genuine respect, not convenience or need. Until then, I focused on nurturing the healthy connections that had proved their value. On quiet evenings, sitting in Grandma Margaret's garden with Patrick, I often reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From homelessness to homeowner, from abandoned daughter to community supporter, I had discovered that family was not a birthright, but a privilege earned through love and respect. I had to learn that having no family is better than having one that hurts you, I told the support group during my final session, and that creating your own family of choice is not just possible, but often more fulfilling than maintaining toxic blood ties. The cottage my grandmother left me had become more than just a house. It was physical proof that I deserved to take up space in the world, that my dreams and boundaries mattered. By defending it against those who would take it from me, I had finally defended my own worth. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who tried to take advantage of you? Or have you built a chosen family that supported you when your biological one failed? Tell me what you think. I really want to know. Thanks for listening. Take care. Good luck.